Have you ever wondered why the ancient Egyptians were so obsessed with death? Well, get ready for a revelation that will shake up your beliefs. The truth is that they weren't fascinated by death, but by eternal life. And at the center of all this madness was a god who would make even the bravest of mortals tremble, Anubis. Forget everything you think you know about Egyptian mythology. The story of Anubis is more surprising than any Hollywood script. Born of a divine scandal, created by a betrayed goddess, and destined to judge the souls of the dead. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But what if I told you that understanding Anubis could be the key to unlocking ancient secrets about life, death, and everything else? Get ready for a journey that goes far beyond the history books. We're going to dive deep into the mysteries of ancient Egypt, uncovering secrets that archaeologists don't tell in documentaries. And best of all, you'll discover how to apply the wisdom of Anubis to your modern life. Yes, you read that right. A god from 5,000 years ago may have the solution to your 21st century problems. But be warned, this is not another boring text about mythology. We're about to embark on an adventure that will make your brain do flips. We're going to laugh, be surprised, and maybe even question some of our certainties. After all, who says learning about ancient gods can't be fun? So, are you ready to find out why Anubis might be more relevant to your life than your daily horoscope? Embark on this journey through ancient Egypt and prepare to never look at a dog the same way again. Let's go. Ancient stories have a lot to teach us, don't they? Let's dive into a fascinating legend from Egyptian mythology, as rich in symbolism as the pyramids are in mystery. Just imagine an extramarital affair between gods that gives rise to one of the most emblematic figures in the Egyptian pantheon. It's jaw-dropping, isn't it? We're talking about the birth of Anubis, the fruit of a forbidden romance between Osiris and Nephthys. But come on, let's not judge the gods with our earthly morals. Well, who would have thought that even in the realm of the gods there's a soap opera worthy of prime time? But the most incredible thing about this whole story is not the divine scandal, but Isis' reaction. Think about it. Your sister had an affair with your husband and got pregnant. How would you react? Well, Isis, showing compassion worthy of a goddess, after all, she was one, decided to raise Anubis as if he were her own son. No wonder this compassionate attitude ended up shaping the character of the young god. And look how things turn out in unexpected ways. This gesture by Isis not only prevented a Homeric feud on the Egyptian Olympus, but also guaranteed Anubis eternal loyalty. As they say, sometimes an act of kindness can change the course of an entire story. Imagine if Isis had reacted with anger or resentment. Would Anubis have become the trusted guardian of the dead that we know? But don't think it was all a bed of roses, eh? Isis' anguish was real and palpable. After all, it's not every day that you discover a betrayal and have to deal with its consequences. However, she transformed this pain into love and compassion. What lesson can we draw from this for our lives? Perhaps, when faced with difficult situations, we can ask ourselves, what would Isis do? And so, my dear, Anubis grew up under the care of Isis, developing an unwavering loyalty not only to her, but also to Osiris. It was as if the young god had inherited the best of both worlds, the compassion of Isis and the nobility of Osiris. But little did he know that his destiny was about to intertwine with the realm of the dead in a way that no one could have predicted. After all, what happens when a god created with such love becomes the guide of souls in the underworld? Have you ever thought about the weight of being responsible for the souls of the dead? Well, that was the role of Anubis in Egyptian mythology. Just imagine. You spend eternity guiding spirits through the underworld, like a divine GPS for souls. But, come on, Anubis' job went far beyond simply pointing out directions in the afterlife. The crucial moment of the afterlife journey was the famous weighing of the heart. Think of a scene worthy of a cosmic reality show. On one side of the scales, the heart of the deceased. On the other, the feather of truth. And there was Anubis, overseeing everything with the seriousness of a Supreme Court judge. If the heart was lighter than the feather, Oba, you go straight to paradise. But if it were heavier, wow, it was time to face Amit, the devourer of souls. But don't think that Anubis was just a celestial bureaucrat. He was compassionate and fair, giving a helping hand to the deceased whenever possible. He was like that nice teacher who gives you a few extra points in the final exam, you know? Of course, without compromising the integrity of the trial. After all, rules are rules, even in the afterlife. And look how interesting it is. The role of Anubis makes us reflect on our own journey, doesn't it? Maybe we should do a heart weighing once in a while? How about asking yourself at the end of the day, have I been lighter than a feather or heavy as lead today? It can be a great way to keep our karma in check, but don't think it stops there. Anubis was multitasking even before it became fashionable to do so. As well as being a guide and judge, he was also the protector of tombs and mummified bodies. It was as if he were the VIP security guard of the underworld, ensuring that no one was disturbed in their eternal rest. And let's face it, with all due respect to our current security guards, none of them are as imposing as a jackal-headed god, right? Speaking of which, have you ever wondered why Anubis looked so peculiar? Well, that's a story for another time. Have you heard that the Egyptians were masters of preservation? No, I'm not talking about jams or pickles. I'm referring to the art of mummification. And guess who was the patron of this practice? That's right, our friend Anubis. It's like he was the chef of the afterlife, only instead of seasoning steaks, he seasoned, well, you get the idea. The whole thing started when Anubis had to deal with the body of Osiris. Just imagine the challenge. Your divine father has been butchered, and you have to put the pieces together. It's like a macabre puzzle, only with eternal consequences. But Anubis did well and managed to preserve Osiris' body, thus creating the process of mummification. Can you imagine his pride? Look, Mom, I've invented a way to preserve bodies for millennia. And don't think it was a simple process, no? Mummification was a real science, full of complex steps and elaborate rituals. It was like baking a cake, except that the cake lasted about 3,000 years. First, the organs were removed, except for the heart, of course, which had to be weighed later. Then they dehydrated the body with salt. Finally, they wrapped it all up in linen, reciting incantations. And voila, we have a mummy ready for the afterlife. But it didn't stop there. Anubis supervised a series of other funerary rituals. It was as if he were the master of ceremonies for the biggest event of your life, or rather, your death. From the preparation of the body to the placement of the protective amulets, everything passed through his sieve. It's like organizing a big party. Only the party lasts forever, and the guests are all, well, dead. And you know what's most incredible? These rituals weren't mere superstition. They reflected deep beliefs about life, death, and eternity. Every gesture, every word, every object had a meaning. It's as if a person's entire life was summed up and eternalized at that moment. It makes you think, doesn't it? What would we like to be eternalized about ourselves? What rituals would mark our passing? Well, fortunately, we don't have to worry about that now. But how about doing our own symbolic mummification? Preserving the best in us for the future. Well, if you think that the life of an Egyptian god was all about sitting on a golden throne, eating grapes and drinking wine, get ready for a surprise. Anubis, our beloved jackal god, was always in some cosmic mess. It's as if he were the James Bond of the Egyptian pantheon, always ready for an impossible mission. Let's take, for example, the time Anubis had to defend Ra against Apep. Just imagine the scene. Ra's solar boat sailing through the night sky, when suddenly, zoom, Apep, the serpent of chaos, appears and wants to swallow the sun. It's like an action movie, only with gods. And there was Anubis, along with other gods, playing superhero to save the day, or rather, the night. But don't think that Anubis only knew how to kick ass. He also had his divine Dr. House moments. Remember the famous Eye of Horus? Well, it was Anubis who helped heal it. It's as if he were a celestial emergency room doctor. Dr. Anubis, we have an emergency in room 3. Seriously injured divine eye. And off he went with his mystical first aid kit. And if you think your relationship with your brothers is complicated, wait until you hear about Anubis and Bata. These two had a relationship that was more confusing than a Mexican soap opera. In The Tale of the Two Brothers, Bata goes through a series of bizarre transformations, and guess who's always around to help? That's right, our friend Anubis. He's like that big brother who always gets you out of trouble, only on a divine scale. But do you know what's most impressive about all these stories? It's how Anubis managed to balance all these roles. One moment he's a fierce warrior, the next a gentle healer, and he still finds time to be a helpful brother. Makes you think, doesn't it? How many different roles do we take on in our lives? Could it be that, like Anubis, we can be versatile and still retain our essence? Maybe that's the real superpower. Not strength or immortality, but the ability to adapt without losing who we really are. And speaking of who we are, have you ever stopped to think about the impact Anubis had on ancient Egyptian culture? If there was one thing the ancient Egyptians took seriously, it was life after death. And at the center of all this obsession was none other than our friend Anubis. It was as if he was the Mick Jagger of the afterlife. Everyone knew him, everyone respected him, and no one dared to challenge his star status. Just imagine, you spend your whole life preparing for your big meeting with Anubis. It's like preparing for the biggest job interview of your life, except that the job is eternity. The Egyptians saw Anubis as a compassionate guide, that friend you want by your side when things get tough. Only, in this case, things got tough after you'd kicked the can down the road. And don't think that Anubis was only worshipped at the moment of death. His image was everywhere. Temples, amulets, paintings in tombs. It was like the face of a divine advertising campaign. Are you worried about the afterlife? Trust in Anubis, the only god who guarantees your smooth passage to eternity or your money back. Okay, maybe not exactly like that, but you get the idea. But the most fascinating thing is how the figure of Anubis shaped people's behavior in life. After all, if you know you're going to have to face the weighing of the heart at the end, maybe you'll think twice before you gossip or get the wrong change, right? It's like having a divine lie detector watching you 24/7. Don't we need a bit of that awareness these days? And look how curious it is. Even with his dark role as god of the dead, Anubis was seen as a protective and benevolent figure. It's as if he were that strict teacher that everyone fears, but deep down knows that he only wants the best for his students. He wasn't there to punish, but to guide and protect. It makes you wonder, how do we view our own authority figures today? Can't we learn something from this ancient vision of respect and reverence without losing our individuality? It seems that the ancient Egyptians had a lot to teach us, not only about death, but also about life. So, my friends, after this journey through the world of Anubis, how's your head? I bet it's spinning like a top in the desert. But before we get back to reality, let's reflect for a moment. What can we learn from this jackal-headed god who lived millennia ago? Think about it. What if we did our own heart weighing every day? No, you don't need to get a golden scale or a magic feather. How about, before going to sleep, asking yourself, today, was I fair like Anubis? Was I compassionate like Isis? Did I face my challenges with the courage of a god? It sounds simple, but it can be revolutionary. Are you ready to be the Anubis of your own life? Not to judge others, but to guide yourself along nobler paths? How about starting now? I challenge you to do one thing today, no matter how small, that would make Anubis proud. It could be helping someone, facing a fear, or simply being kinder to yourself. But beware, knowledge without action is like a mummy without a body, empty and purposeless. So what are you going to do with all that you've learned? Are you going to let these ideas mummify in your mind? Or are you going to use them to transform your reality? And look, if you found this journey through ancient Egypt fascinating, this is just the tip of the pyramid. There's a lot more ancient knowledge waiting to be unearthed. Do you want to continue this adventure? Then don't waste any time. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any secrets from ancient civilizations that could revolutionize your modern life. Remember, knowledge is like the Nile. The more you explore, the more fertile your mind becomes. So, are you ready for your next mythological adventure? The world of the ancient gods awaits you. Until next time, and may Anubis guide your steps.